Okay, before we get started in Revit and adding doors and windows, there's a few key terms that we have to understand. And I think it's easier to understand them kind of in a sketch or while sketching and talking about it. So we're going to jump right into it. One of the key terms is going to be your head height. Your head height refers to it technically refers to the header that sits above. So a header is a structural component. This is holding the weight. So imagine there's a beam, let's say a 4x4 beam that's holding the weight, and it's used to kind of frame around the door. That's known as your header, right? In Revit, the height of the door, okay, so in other words, the top of the door is known as your head height. Okay. We're going to begin to see these commands, or I'm sorry, see these properties or see these terms in the properties box in the top left corner. When we started adding walls, we have to deal with that base offset, top offset, location line. Right in that little dialog box, the property box, it's going to ask us to set a head height when we start to add doors, and the same goes for windows. So our head height for a window is the same element, okay? It's going to ask what is the head height of that window. Now, generally speaking, and this is more on the construction side, generally speaking, your head height is all the same throughout the entire project. So let's say if we wanted to add another door in the future, okay? Typically, you put the door so that the top, the header lines up, okay? Take a walk outside in any residential neighborhood and pay attention to this. Look at the exterior door and then kind of draw this imaginary line on the outside of the building, and you'll begin to notice all of the windows are also lined up to the top of the door. Okay, so this is just general practice. It makes construction a lot easier. It also just makes the building look kind of consistent. However, that's not to say that every door and every window has to follow the head height. We can easily add a window up here, right? It might not be the most visually pleasing window, um, or maybe it is, depending on what the style and depending on what it is that you're looking for. Okay, but generally speaking, and as we get started, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our head height always stays the same. Okay. Now, another term is going to be our sill height, and that is the bottom. Okay, so that's the bottom of typically a window. At the bottom of the window, this is typically where we put the windowsill. So that's why we use the term sill. Okay. Now in Revit, we do have, we are going to have or see the property for a sill for a door as well. Generally speaking, when we're talking about sills, they typically only refer to windows, but Revit actually refers to them in doors, indoors as well. And the reason for that is sometimes our door is not going to be at the finished floor. Sometimes we might have a raised foundation, or we might have an area of the house that is slightly higher than the rest of the house. Okay, so we might, from the outside, maybe we need a few steps to get to there, but the finished floor is somewhere down here, right? So in that case, the sill of this door would probably be 2 feet above the finished floor somewhere down here, right? Or it could be whatever. So generally speaking, the sill on a door is going to be set to 0, 0, but understand that we can always move and adjust that, okay? That a door also has a sill, okay? Um, the other thing I wanted to discuss is actually before we move down, really quickly, just want to show you guys the this line type, okay, which is kind of a center line, refers to the door swing. So think of this point. So wherever the arrow, okay, or wherever the triangle, however you want to call it, is pointing to, that means that that is the hinge. Okay, so that means that the hinge of this door is on this side. So it's going to, the door will always stay along this side, and it'll swing, okay, off of the hinge over here. Okay, so that means that this door is going to go that way. So this graphic here is just a way to understand or to represent how the direction that the door opens. Okay, and it's important when we start getting into elevations. Actually, you know what? Let's draw this door in plan. So let's say we have a door. Okay. Generally speaking, question I get asked quite a bit is, where do I place my doors? Generally speaking, and this is a general kind of practice, it is not a building code practice. Okay, we could technically place the door almost anywhere, depending on, there are some ADA requirements, handicap accessibility requirements. But when we're talking about residential, you could kind of place them almost anywhere. However, best practice is that you place them about 3 to 4 inches. Okay, so you're going to see me drawing this or modeling and adding doors. Okay, and I generally will place them 4 inches away from the wall. Okay, we're going to put 4 inches, generally about 4 inches away from the wall. And the reason why we do that is simply just because we typically will have a doorknob here. And sometimes you want this door to kind of swing back a little bit so that it fully opens. And you don't want it running into the wall. Okay, so we don't want that. There's also a construction aspect to it. It's easier with the studs. It's easier to frame, things like that. So generally speaking, we're going to go 4 inches. Now, another kind of common mistake when we're placing doors, let's say we put it 4 inches. Okay, so yeah, let's say this is 4 inches. But what I'll end up seeing is the door being placed in this direction. That's okay. So that means, right, so there's the door and swinging in that direction. Generally speaking, ideally, you want to, when you enter a room, you want to enter and open the door so that when I'm standing here, okay, I'm able to look into the space. Okay. Put yourself in the other scenario. Put yourself over here. If I open the door and I swing it open, the first thing I'm looking at is this wall, right? That's the first thing I'm looking at. Not only that, in order to close this door, I'm going to have to step out and then swing the door shut. Over here on the other side, I can essentially, I have the space to just kind of step to the side and swing it out. Okay. So this becomes very awkward. Okay. And this is usually the sign of someone who's just beginning within the profession, that they open the door and swing it, and it's swinging into a wall. This is what we call kind of swinging into a wall, because the person has to walk into a wall in order to close it, and we're looking at the wall first. So this is the correct way. This is the incorrect way. Make sure that when your doors are opening, that they're opening into the room. Now you'll also notice that in both of these, I placed the door right up against the wall. Okay. The reason for that is, let's say we place the door farther away, maybe in the middle of the room. We could do that, but typically what ends up happening is this space back here becomes wasted space, okay? Or space that isn't really used. Okay, if we move this door over, sorry, that's supposed to be an arrow. If we move that door over closer to the wall, then it'll make the space look a lot larger, right? And we don't have any wasted space. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, actually, no, that's right. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. So those were the main things, just kind of placement of the door, placing it 4 inches away from the wall, and then try avoiding placing the door in the center of the room. You generally want them next to the wall. And then just remember the terms here, head height and sill, or it's also sill height. And that we want to place all of our doors and windows should typically have the same head height. Okay, so hopefully that helps to prepare us for adding doors and windows in Revit.